thank you very much for the invitation. So I'm originally from the Netherlands, but I moved to South Africa about half a year, almost exactly half a year ago now. The trip was not that far. So what I'd like to talk about today is the digital resources for the official languages here in South Africa. And I didn't really know there was this link with the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Several talks have happened already that have said most of what I wanted to say, or at least are really related to what I wanted to say, which is good because I am actually going to do something slightly different. So a slight disclaimer. So what I'd like to talk about is my experience or how I see what's going on here in South Africa, and that's just my experience from the last few months. I know that there are quite a few cultural differences. I know that by now, comparing the Netherlands to South Africa. So if I make any, how do you say it, not so nice comments, I blame it on these cultural differences. Also, I noticed that some terminology has different meanings, or you use other terms for what we normally use. So I'm kind of showing you here this outsider's view, right? My experiences from the last half year. Okay. So when I arrived here, I heard terms that, to be honest, I never really heard before. So this Fourth Industrial Revolution, never heard of that. I mean, I know it exists, but in Europe, at least in the Netherlands, it's not such a hot topic as it is here. It doesn't mean that it's not there. I think we're just not using the term. Right? So we have the same issues, we have the same problems, the same challenges. The term was completely new to me. So I had to figure out what is this Fourth Industrial Revolution, and it's really funny because I don't dare to ask that now, but if you ask some people, so what is it? They're like, yeah, this is this new thing, and that's going to change our lives, and yeah, but what is it? We don't really know. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of compare this Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is something which is very important. So what is this? I'm going to try and compare that to the other industrial revolutions, and I'm not an expert on industrial revolution, so I actually have to look this up as well. So I'm just trying to give this kind of summary of the other industrial revolutions that we've had and see if we can use that to say something about this Fourth Industrial Revolution. So we know what that is. Some other word that I didn't know at all was this decolonizing. That's apparently very important here. I now know a little bit more about this. At the time,
it's really important to you.
Sorry,
I think the culprit of it.
Look, I was not alive at that moment, and I have the feeling, or at least that's just my hope, perhaps, that the Dutch didn't colonize South Africa. Anyway, let's not go there. I just wanted to figure out what is this decolonizing, because that's one of the other terms that's just massive here, and I better understand it now, but I'll try to link these as well. And then I work at Solidariteit. I'm interested. I'm working on digital humanities, so I'll kind of link that to digital humanities. Okay. So thinking about these industrial revolutions. So apparently this is the fourth one, right? So we've had a few before this. So let's take a look at the revolutions that we've had, and let's look at some of the properties of these revolutions, because that might actually say something about properties of this Fourth Industrial Revolution. So like I said, I'm not an expert on industrial revolution, so I'll just give you just kind of small overview here. Okay, so this first industrial revolution, often called the Industrial Revolution. So what was important there? There were new manufacturing processes, mechanized factories, water steam power, that kind of thing. So there's a complete change because now, at that time, now we had mass production. And so when did that happen? 1760 to 1830, at least in Europe. I mean, in other places it happened in other times. What was interesting, I see a typo there, this was followed by a recession. Okay. The second one, often called technological revolution. So what was there? Technological advancement, telegraph, telephone, communication, worldwide communication, globalization, electrical power. Approximately 1870 to 1914. That was followed by a world war. Wait a minute, I start seeing some patterns here. The third one, digital revolution, right? Digitization, digital electronics, computers, the internet, starting up these transistors in the 70s, integrated circuits, computerized thing, the information age, and that's what you need to have this information age. I don't know exactly, so it started around 1950s, perhaps until now, but that doesn't really fit my picture so much. So let's make it end around 2007, because then we had a recession, right? So that kind of follows that nice pattern. Okay, so that's number 1, 2, and 3. So now what is this fourth industrial revolution? So I started looking for definitions, and it turns out that different people say different things. But what you normally get is something like this. The fourth industrial revolution represents a fundamental change in the way we live, work, and relate to one another. It is a new chapter in human development, enabled by extraordinary technology advances commensurate with those of the first, second, and third industrial revolutions. Okay, this doesn't actually say anything to me. Right? This doesn't mean anything. But you get a lot of these kind of definitions, and they, I mean, I can imagine something, but I don't really know really what it is. Okay, so I don't really know what it means. Okay, so let's forget about this now and kind of switch to this. We will come back to this, okay? Let's look at this decolonizing, because fourth industrial revolution apparently is very important here in South Africa. Like I said, I hadn't really heard of the term before. That might just be my ignorance. But another word that's very important here is this decolonizing. Decolonization. So let's look at that first. I didn't know what that was either. So you can just look it up. It's a transitive verb, to free from colonial status. Yeah, okay. Now, okay, I'm not an expert on South Africa, but I think South Africa is not really a colony anymore, depending on how you define it. Of course, I don't want to step on anybody's toes here. 1960, I think since 1960, a republic, right, kind of independent, that kind of stuff. So what is this decolonization? I mean, why now? I mean, 1960, that's a bit some time ago. So I started looking into this a little bit more, and I think I found what it is. It's not just decolonization. What it really is this intellectual decolonization. That's, I think, what's going on here. So you want to remove aspects that make the colonized feel inferior. I think that's more what's going on than this kind of hardcore decolonization. Okay, so I started talking to people, and it turns out that language is actually one of the, at least my experience, one of the core parts of this decolonization. Right, so there are apparently two colonial languages, English and Afrikaans, perhaps depending on who you talk to. And there are a lot of discussions on what about the other languages in education, in whatever. So what you'd like to have, and I think that's what this decolonization is about, is inclusion. You want to have access to all the information, at least in all the official languages. Right? That's at least part of this decolonization. Perhaps there's more to it, but... Okay, now if we look at what's going on, see if this actually makes any sense. So at the current moment, if you look at the support for the official languages, do you see that not all languages, all the 11 official languages have equal support? Right? So that actually is the case. So education in home language, there are some discussions there. I've had interesting discussions with people. I'm not exactly sure, but I thought that all the parliamentary proceedings were available in all official languages. I can't find any. I mean, I can find English, and from the 1960s around, you can find them in Afrikaans, in physical books, but not online. What's going on there? So in general, there's actually limited availability also of digital resources in all these languages. Yeah? Okay, now that's where Sadilar comes in. So we already had a lot of information about Sadilar, and I'm very happy that you gave this overview of what Sadilar is doing, because I only have a small part here. So Sadilar Research Infrastructure, it's funded by the Department of Science and Innovation. It has all these nodes, but we already had that information, so that's really nice. Cellular runs essentially two programs, a digitization program, where we try to collect and create collections of text and speech, multimodal as well, so there might be video as well, we're still working on that. And the other part is the digital humanities program, where we want to build research capacity, specifically for digital humanities. Okay, so I already said quickly something about this. So so this linguistic data, so these language collections, these corpora, they contain examples of language use. Now, we were just talking about this decolonization part. So what does it mean for the different languages, for the resources available for all of the official languages? Do we need to decolonize these linguistic resources? Well, it turns out that depending a little bit on how you define it, for English, there's a lot available. For South African English, there's less. But if you then start looking at Afrikaans, there's a kind of decent amount. It's not huge, but you can actually do something. But if you look at all the other official languages, there's actually not so much data available. So perhaps this does require some decolonization. We perhaps need to boost the other languages a little bit. Okay, then the other track within Cellular is this digital humanities. So the digital humanities means that we want to be able to do, say, research in the field of humanities, but using digital techniques. Essentially have the computer do a lot of the boring work for us, okay? So there are a lot of kind of sub-areas in the field of digital humanities. So digital archives, so how do we store all this information? How can we easily access large amounts of information? Also new ways of publishing information, so in videos or interactive videos and web pages, etc. Cultural analytics, so trying to find patterns in cultural behavior. Of course, you need to have information, data there. And also human language technology or natural language processing. So let's take a quick look at that. So this human language technology or natural language processing or computational linguistics, these are essentially tools that automatically analyze text for you. And so you can kind of shove in some text and you get an annotated or analyzed text as a result. So you've all been using these tools, spelling checkers, perhaps text-to-speech, but also things like Google, machine translation. We just heard information on that as well. These are all examples of these kind of tools. If you want to build these tools, so you can actually use them, first of all, you need to have some sort of software package that can actually handle this data, but you also need to train them. You need to give example data, example language, for the tools to see this is what language should look like. You know? However, not for all of the official language we have that much data available. So for these languages, we can't actually build it, or we could build them, but the performance is really bad because we don't know, the system doesn't know what this language should look like. Yeah, so because we don't have that much data for these languages, we also don't have that many tools for these languages available. Okay, so many of these South African languages are under-resourced. So the tools itself, but also the data collections. Now the question is, how do we start boosting this? We need to get this data from somewhere. Yeah? So where can we collect this? Well, there are different ways of doing this, but one thing that I think might be interesting is we have this social media, right? And on social media, people use language. They use it all the time. They share information, they communicate. Why? You see that all over the place. This is worldwide. You see essentially all languages there, even languages that are not official languages. I mean, everything is there. Big data, let's kind of throw in another one of these kind of hot terms, right? Big data. Everybody's doing big data. Nobody knows what it is. Let's just call it large amount of data. It's out there. It's on the web. You can actually access it because it's online. As long as you can just grab that online data, you've got access to it. Wonderful. So if we can do that, then we can actually create these language resources and then create the tools and make the languages more accessible. Okay, so what I just said, I'm now going to reverse. So we had this initial problem. kind of intellectual colonization. We want to get rid of that, right? What we'd like to have is equal support, or kind of equal support for all the South African languages. However, at the moment, we have limited support for many of these languages. What we'd like to have, to get more support, is provide more tools. So you can actually use these languages more easily. However, you have these limited availability of language collections. So what we need to do is we need to develop these language collections. For that, we need to find the data, and we can probably find that, for example, in social media. Yeah? So that's kind of the reasoning here. But now I might have a solution to this fourth industrial revolution, because if we can do this, then we actually have these tools available, and that will actually represent a fundamental change in the way we live, work, etc. Right? So perhaps if we do this, what we're really doing is this fourth industrial revolution. Yeah? So somebody, I can't remember exactly who, wanted to have this one nice one, or perhaps two words. I've got a two-word term here that I think fits very nicely with this fourth industrial revolution. It's more like a social revolution, right? We're using this social information, the social interaction between people to collect information that we can then use to build tools that will help them in whatever part of their life. Yeah. Okay, so this has essentially already been going on for a short while because social media already exists. We just didn't realize it. So let's call it around 1997. That's when the first social media networks kind of arose. Until now, of course, this doesn't fit exactly with the other revolutions in time. But you get the idea, right? So we can use this, and this will then boost all this work. This is the fourth industrial revolution. Okay, so quickly going back to all these revolutions. So the first industrial revolution, steam, water, we have machines and pipes, positive effect, mass production, negative effect, pollution. Okay, not everything is positive here. Second industrial revolution, electricity, so turbines and wires, you need that to get it to work. Globalization was the positive effect, unemployment was the negative effect. Third industrial revolution, processing was the power. What do you need? Transistors to build computers and the internet. Yeah. So interconnectedness was the positive part there. Information overload was the negative part there. Right? There was simply too much. If Google stopped now, or all the search engines, we're completely lost. We can't find anything. Right? So information overload. And then the fourth one, the power there, I think, is this kind of shared linguistic information. We need to collect that shared linguistic information, that information that's out there. So the enablers are really this human information. Machines can't just do it. We need to first get examples from what humans are doing. We can probably get that from social media. There might be other ways as well, but we need to get this social information, sharing of information. Positive effect, accessible information on human nature, so we can look at how people behave, what they're doing. We can look at their language, essentially digital humanities. But if we do it incorrectly, then the negative effect will be exclusion. But some people will really be left behind. So we need to make sure that we keep track of that. Okay, so we want to provide this inclusion. That's also this kind of decolonizing, right? Everybody should be part of society and everybody should be included. So what we'd like to have is these tools, these linguistic tools, because that allows you to do spelling checking, text-to-speech, etc. But then for all the South African languages. Yeah? Okay, so to summarize, personally I think that's because I'm so interested in digital humanities. I think this digital humanities is actually driving the fourth industrial revolution. Right? We're interested in researching humanities, and I don't want to go to try to look up definitions of what humanities is. That's as big a problem as this fourth industrial revolution. But I think intuitively we kind of know what this is, right? So doing this kind of research in this area will actually improve inclusion. Right? We can actually see what people are doing. We can see how they use language. What kind of language do they use? And here in South Africa, that might actually lead to this decolonization as well, by just helping people, they said, work in this world in their own language. So digital humanities, the field of digital humanities, that's really where the good things happen. And I think digital humanities is for all. Thank you.